Hello, everybody. My name is Mason. I'm a longtime VGC competitor and longtime Incineroar hater, and this is the Union Room. With me is my guest, my father, Richard. Richard, welcome to the show.
Hey, welcome on, Scott. Good to be on.
All right, so what does Pokemon mean to you?
Pokemon to me means companionship. It means community.
I think that's a very good way to sum it up. The Pokemon games, their mainline entries are about camaraderie and, community essentially with your team of six, traveling the whatever region you're playing in. But your journey started a lot earlier than a lot of other players that we see nowadays. You started competing, what was it, 2012?
Yeah, my first VGC event was in Colorado Springs in 2012. There was a regional in our city, which I was lucky enough to be able to attend. I was able to actually top eight that event. I actually ended up on fifth on standings. Unfortunately, that year they only paid out travel incentive to top four. So unfortunately, I missed out going to nationals that year because they didn't do top cut that time. They actually just did a Swiss to cut. They're not even Swiss to cut, just Swiss to standings. And so I ended up fifth on tiebreakers and missed going to NAS that year.
And for you especially, that started something, it seems like, where you bubble out in some way, at least somewhere. It's happened a couple times. But moving away from that, you have been playing Pokemon since before I was alive. You were there like day one. What was your first Pokemon game, and what do you remember about it specifically?
My first Pokemon game was Pokemon Red. I remember turning 10 years old when Pokemon released, and it came out into America in December. And that was, I went to Blockbuster and rented the Pokemon TV show, the first like 6 episodes on VHS.
Wow.
And I was hooked ever since then. I got my first, I bought a pack of first edition base set when it first came out, and I just thought it was the coolest thing. And then I eventually got a Game Boy and Pokemon Red, and obviously I picked Charmander, and that was the start of my Pokemon journey many moons ago.
Wow, you really embody what Pokemon was trying to encapsulate within Pokemon, being 10 years old at the start of it all. And I think that's really cool, and it carried over to us as kids. I remember my journey started a little bit earlier when I was 6, when you introduced me to it, actually, at the regional. I talked about that a little bit with Braden, actually, being at that regional. And I'm actually using it as a fundamental part of one of my essays for my English class. So that's been really cool. I get to use Pokemon in so many unique ways. Now, are there ways that you use your Pokemon experience outside of a regional, like maybe in work or some other aspect of your personal life?
Yeah, I definitely like to, burn places down with my Charizard. That's outside of the normal games. Some people they got to burn. I think Pokemon has helped me, express more of who I am, or be able to express who I am more effectively. Just because, again, being it means community. I've met so many different people. I have gone and traveled so far that, that just being able to have that Pokemon vocabulary and talk to other people about it has been really a great way to kind of break the ice with some people. Everyone's got a favorite Pokemon.
I think being able to branch out in such a way for Pokemon and to have us all be connected under one thing is a truly unique experience that not a lot of people get to enjoy in some aspect. You also compete in Magic the Gathering, and that's been something you've been doing nearly as long. What would you say your experiences are like within Magic?
You get a lot of crossover when it comes to like tournament structure. Obviously we have Swiss and Top Cut and Magic as well. So going into like the Pokemon VGC scene, it wasn't a big jump for me to kind of understand that grind and what it takes to have a high level finish, what you need to do to be able to get there. Tournament strategy, it doesn't matter what tournament you go to. You know you're going to be there a long time. You've got to know that you need to stay hydrated. There's a lot of things that you do to maintain your mental acuity while you're playing. And I do believe that my Magic the Gathering tournament experience has helped me in my Pokemon experience, because when it gets to those later rounds and a lot of people are mentally drained, that's, you've got to be able to push through. And it's usually around 5 and 6 where people start to get gassed. And I feel like at that point, that's just when I'm getting started.
Yes, you definitely have a lot more experience compared to a lot of competitors. Now, you've been in the scene for a long time. What has been your favorite format to play in? What have you liked to have seen over the past almost decade and a half of competing? What has been your favorite thing to, like, or your favorite format or just favorite generation of Pokemon that you've competed in?
Well, that's a good question. I think I do have a soft spot for Gen 5. Being that is where I started my Pokemon competitive journey, it still feels like it wasn't so pushed for like all of the restricted mons that we have now. I really enjoyed using weaker Pokemon, well, quote unquote weaker.
Yeah.
There's just a lot more strategy that goes into it versus like push the Ashby Barrage button all the time. Mm-hmm. You have to kind of think about what your speed tiers are more. There's a lot more involved when you're using, lower base power Pokemon than when you're just spamming, restricteds all the time.
That makes sense. I agree. I don't necessarily like the restricted formats, which is funny because our best performance was in a restricted format with some of the strongest Pokemon to exist. So it is a bit ironic, but I will say Pokemon has expanded so much since its grassroots days. Like the earliest documented stuff we get, you don't see too much of it from like 2008 to 2010. There's not a lot of information. So you were there right when it was like kind of just getting slightly bigger than what it used to be. But you were also there when it was still grassroots kind of deal. Kind of like how Melee used to be, where it wasn't so much of a big stage or like a global audience, where it was more of just guys who enjoyed the game getting together and competing at a unique level. What would you say that experience is like, and how much has it differed over the past decade and a half?
Oh man, Pokemon has exploded. Going from VGC being, free to enter one-day events that was usually on Sunday because everyone wanted to do TCG, and VGC was the thing that people did when they dropped out of TCG. So to see how it has grown, it's really quite incredible. When we still see a lot of the same people playing, a lot of the old heads were playing back then on what we called Pokemon Online, which is the precursor to Pokemon Showdown. So it's just to see how it went from like almost a side event to being its own mainstream platform has been really incredible to watch, and to see the growth of a lot of the players that I've known who have over the years who have played and started as seniors and now they're masters. It's really incredible to see the growth of people.
The growth of the community and the people within it as a whole, I've been able to witness, not to necessarily the same extent, but I was in essentially that group of younger guys who grew up into it. To see those kids evolve and, I wouldn't say take over the scene, but become such big names as to where they are competing at the top level consistently. It is truly a remarkable thing. Now, you recently did really well at Seattle, and that has been quite interesting. What would you say your experience with Seattle was? Like, what was it like being there and competing?
Man, it was a breath of fresh air, honestly. I haven't competed in an event since OCIC 2023, and there I went 6-3. And so it's always right there on the top cuts. I think I haven't done worse. The worst I've done in the last X years has been 5-4. So I always have a positive record, but to push through day 2 it just felt really good to know that I still have it, but it's still something, it's a skill that you develop and you still maintain it, whether, you take time away or not. I'm not going to say, I didn't do anything. Obviously I practiced on Showdown. I worked with players to try and, work on, polish up my skills. But I mean, when you get there at the event, at the venue, all of that, it's all done, and it's all time to put it all to the test. So to come out in 6-2 on day 1, it was really, really great.
You and I talked about that about a couple years ago about whether or not you were going to keep competing within Magic or Pokemon. Like you didn't know if that was within your future, and to see you go out there and do so well, it was kind of like I wouldn't say I told you so, but like I knew you were going to do well outside of like or in events that you don't compete in anymore. Not just because like you're my dad, but because I've seen the level at which you can compete, and I don't think that ever goes away. So it could be nice for people who have kind of taken a break from their competitive scenes, whether it be Pokemon, Magic, Yu-Gi-Oh, or just wherever they were, to still know that they have a chance to compete at a high level and succeed. So I think you were a great blueprint for that. Now, Pokemon has been a very family thing for us. Most of our travels for Pokemon have involved almost our entire family. What would you say to kids or parents who are getting into Pokemon with Champions coming out? What would you say to them about the scene and getting into VGC?
Honestly, as far as gaming communities go, and when I say Pokemon means community to me, the Pokemon community is way more wholesome than any other gaming community I've been a part of. It's so much easier to make friends. Everyone's there at the event, not just to compete at the highest levels, but real time. We're there to tell the war stories and the crits and the misses and the successes and the failures. It all builds a narrative to who you are. And it builds resiliency as well, because there are times where you can make every correct decision and you still lose due to no fault of your own. And being able to understand that that's kind of how the world works. You can do everything right and still not be successful. It happens, but being able to pick yourself up, have that confidence that's like, hey, you know what? I didn't perform this time. Here's where I made my mistakes. Being able to realize that and kind of, take a step back outside of the in-game, in-the-moment decisions and kind of look at the overall, the overall competitive mindset. Like I said, like you were saying, I play competitive Magic. I've day 2 GP Denver. I've had decent success in the Magic scene, but the fundamentals are pretty much the same, whether it's Pokemon or Magic. It's the competitive mindset. It's what am I trying to accomplish? How do I get there? Starting with the end in mind. How am I going to get to point B from point A? And being able to navigate that.
Yeah, have you been able to use that resilience that you've developed from Pokemon outside of a regional? Like, has it been something that has benefited you maybe in pursuing jobs or something outside of that?
It is definitely something that becomes a part of you. It's a character trait at that point, because you go through it so often. We obviously all have ups and downs in life, and being able to have that resiliency, not just in games, but in life in general, it really develops you as a person. So yeah, I absolutely use the things that the strategies that I've used or come to use in Pokemon and other competitive games outside of life, because it is a skill that you don't just have to apply only in competitive settings. Again, it's a mindset that you have. Personally,
I find that very true. It's helped me kind of get to where I am. I think that resilience has really translated into sports. Sometimes you're on the up, sometimes you're on the down. Things may be going right for you, some things may be going wrong for you. Maybe you're not starting off as strong as you'd like, or maybe you're a little ahead of where you thought you'd be. There's so many places where you could be in life, but finding a way to kind of balance yourself after whatever's going, or balance yourself with whatever's going on has been something that has been very beneficial for me, and I give a lot of credit to that with Pokemon. Now, Champions is coming out, and there has been some information about EVs and IVs changing, and that's going to significantly, I wouldn't say significantly, but it's going to impact the way we play the game itself and how we know different matchups, like Trick Room especially. Is there anything that you're excited about or worried about within Champions?
I'm actually just excited that Champions is going to come to mobile. I think that's going to drop the barrier of entry for a lot of players. People who would be interested in VGC who might not otherwise have the means to go out and buy a Switch and all the games that you need, and then put all the time into it. Being able to do that in a more accessible format, I believe, will be really great for Pokemon. losing IVs is kind of interesting because it's been such a kind of a staple. Like obviously, a lot of teams you need 31 IVs on everything. Otherwise, what are you doing? But it will affect things like Trick Room probably the most because it's definitely part of those speed tiers is not having those extra speed points. And if everything is going to be base 31, now you're running into some speed ties that you might not have otherwise had because you don't have the ability to lose that speed. So it is interesting. I'm curious to see how it gets incorporated into Champions. But overall, I'm super excited for Champions. I think it's going to be great for the community. It's going to be great for newcomers coming in. And I feel like it's just going to help grow the community even more.
Absolutely. Accessibility has been the biggest issue for the longest time, and especially moving into the Switch era. Having to have a Switch for every competitor is a daunting thing. So it's going to be easier for people in general, and I'm hoping that it opens avenues up for competitors who been wanting to get into it but haven't had the money or the resources necessary. So I'm very excited for that. Do you have any favorite memories specifically from competing? Like, is there a specific moment that you think about or you kind of mention often about your travels and competing?
We all have those war stories that we reminisce about. I just remember taking you to your first nationals, and that was such a proud moment for me to see you, making top cut, making the decision, seeing how you play was really, really cool. I still remember you missing the power whip on Kangaskhan on the Switch, and that would have been incredible. But things like that happen, and those are kind of things that stick out and remember. But I also remember you locking up players with Gengar Liepard with Disable and Encores. There's so many different strategies and so many different ways to play, but spending time with my family and my kids, that is part of what community means. It's something that I was able to share with you guys. It was important to me when I was a kid growing up, and then being able to pass that on to the next generation has been a very fulfilling, like, personal achievement, I would say. Like, I can look back and say, like, hey, you know what? I shared these adventures with my kids. They went on to be very successful. And it's something that we can share. It's not just me going to events. It was us, and I think that made it even more special.
Yeah, that's one thing I talked about with Abel, oddly. I said, it's interesting that Pokemon is a one-on-one game, and for it to be so community-driven. You don't really hear a lot about other esports, or I wouldn't say esports, but competitive games like it, where the community is the number one thing or the number one driver that motivates people to either get better or to kind of keep coming back. I hear a lot of times from other scenes is that, like, the scene sucks and I don't want to be in that community. But Pokemon has meant so much to me, and the people within it have been so important to me. Do you have any friends of yours that you give a lot of thanks to in your early days?
Zatro or Bavarius, he was definitely a big help to me, not only in being able to kind of learn the game, because when I had first started playing, I played, Gen 1 and I played Gen 2, but then I had not played. I kind of switched over to Magic for Gens 3 and 4 and pretty much for all of Gen 5 as well. And so there was a lot of changes that came around with that. You had Pokemon items that people that were able to be held. You had new abilities that weren't a thing in Gen 2. So there was this giant learning curve. And I would say all of the people that I've come in contact with have had a positive effect on me in my play. There was the old Team Magma players like Bopper and Benji. Like, we had, there was all these sub communities that were kind of smaller, but we all really enjoyed playing. And I've made so many friends through Pokemon that, it's no matter where I go in the country, I know somebody there, and I know them through the game, and it's been incredible. So yeah, like Zatro has been really amazing. He was a really big help in the early years. Tom Hall was a really great player. You know, we were all part of this group we called Bunch of Bulls, and they were Bouffalons on our shirts, and we had, just had a great time back back in 2012 and onwards, and even into 2013 when I came back for the next nationals and made top cut there. It was the same group of people that you see playing now who are competing at the top levels. They're still good. They still got it. So it's, they have a lot of wisdom to impart. There's a lot of information that's available now that wasn't really available when I started playing Pokemon 2. Like, we only really had Smogon, and then Nugget Bridge came out and kind of developed it even further, and now we've got Victory Road. Like, it just keeps getting bigger and bigger, and more people are finding VGC.
Yes, VGC has grown exponentially since we started, and it's amazing to see. And I feel like it's a testament for everybody to keep coming back. Over the past almost 2 decades, we still have competitors from before us who are still competing. Maybe not as much, but you know what I mean. Like, it keeps drawing people back in because it's just such a friendly space, and it encourages and promotes such healthy behavior and personal growth to, like, children and parents about, if they're on edge. But you weren't a kid that was competing. You've been competing since, how old were you?
Man, I mean, as far, like, I was playing the Pokemon trading card game when it was first out, when it was base set and jungle. So I mean, I've been competing in Pokemon for a very long time. VGC specifically, though, since 2012. So that's 14 years now. And of course, I've taken a few breaks here and there where, like, we weren't able to play during COVID because it was COVID. And not that we didn't play, we still played, but we just didn't get to play in person. And I think that was kind of a big. That's the big draw is going there and sharing this experience with all of the players who across the nation. One of my favorite things used to be walking the line for nationals before it started, because there's just so much hype. Everyone's so excited to get in, and when those doors open and you walk in, you see this giant Pikachu hanging from the ceiling, and everybody's here, and all the judges are clapping. Like, there's really nothing quite like it. It's definitely a very unique experience for competitive, because we don't have anything like that for Magic. Like, we have MagicCon, but that's more of a just a celebration of Magic, whereas the Pokemon Regionals and Pokemon Nationals, those are an experience all of their own. And to anyone who hasn't been able to go and experience it, I highly recommend it, because it's just, again, it's something that you really have to experience to be able to kind of understand the community.
I agree. So I think actually I'll end this off on as a thank you to you to showing me the world, essentially, and to opening up those avenues for my siblings and I. I wouldn't have been able to do half the things that I've done if it wasn't for you introducing us to Pokemon and bringing me to those locals. It might have been a chore. I remember Abel being so little. It's. I just want to say thank you, and it has meant a lot to me. It has built the foundation of my character. So, again, I thank you, and I appreciate all that you've done for us. So.
Oh, it's definitely one of my prouder, experiences is taking you guys to these events and watching you guys succeed and being able to celebrate your success, as well as my own. It's definitely been a wild ride. But I wouldn't trade it for anything. All of the trips. All of the people that we've stayed with, all the things that we do, all of our little all the nights at Steak and Shake. Like, there's just so many little rituals that we've had that have really a good way to kind of expose you guys to other avenues, other places, and new experiences. There's just so much out there in the world, and you can experience all of it with Pokemon by your side.